The 70s are a special time that will always remain in the memory of those who were lucky enough to grow up then. Those were the years when everything happened slowly, with a soul, when children went outside to play and returned only after dark, and adults gathered around the TV to watch an evening show as a family. It was a time without the internet, when letters were handwritten and music was listened to on vinyl, when feelings weren't expressed in emoticons but through handwriting. People lived closer to each other, talked more often, and believed in the best. Nowadays, much of it seems outlandish: soda machines and glass bottles, newsstands with comic books, family trips without GPS, radios with antennas that had to be deftly adjusted to catch your favorite station. But then it was everyday life that seemed ordinary, but now it is seen as something warm, alive, and almost fairy tale-like. And while technology has made life easier, these simple memories have something that many people miss today: a real presence, unhurried and cozy. In this video, we're going to immerse ourselves in the atmosphere of that time and remember 30 things that those who grew up in America in the 1970s are nostalgic for today. Riding a Schwin Stingray bike with high handlebars and banana seats? Those who grew up in the 70s remember their first Schwin Stingray not just as a bicycle but as a symbol of freedom. It had a distinctive high ape hanger handlebar, a banana-shaped seat that allowed two people to ride together, and chrome fenders. These bikes were so iconic that kids would modify them themselves. Some would attach a card from a deck of playing cards to flick against the spokes to create a motorcycle sound, while others would hang a mirror and toy flags on the handlebars. The summer was spent riding around the neighborhood endlessly, making friends, racing, and having their first freedom without parents. Watching Saturday morning cartoons, The Jetsons, Scooby-Doo, Fat Albert. Saturday mornings in the 1970s were almost a ritual. Wake up early, pour yourself a big bowl of sugary cereal and milk, and sit in front of the TV. Your parents are still asleep, and you're in complete freedom, alone with colorful characters. It was hours of magic. George Jetson flew through futuristic megacities. Scooby-Doo and his crew solved spooky mysteries, and Fat Albert taught friendship and morality. These were not just cartoons, but a window into a world where everything was possible. And every child knew for sure that if you missed a Saturday, you would have to wait a whole week for the next one. One of the most popular shows of that time was The Jetson Family. This animated series was about a family living in the future, in a world of high technology, flying cars, and robots. In it, children first saw a glimpse of what life might look like in the future, with automated assistants, houses floating in the air, and robots doing all the chores. The animation was bright, colorful, and technologically advanced, making the show especially exciting for children of the time. No less favorite was the animated series Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?, which also hardly left anyone indifferent. This funny but at the same time intriguing animated series tells about a company of teenagers and their talking dog who solve various mystical riddles. Another popular show was Fat Albert, which not only entertained children, but also carried important social lessons. This animated series, created by Bill Cosby, depicted the lives of teenagers in urban neighborhoods, touching on important issues of friendship, family, community, and self-esteem. The animated series had a distinctive style and differed from other, lighter shows in that it often dealt with serious topics, forcing children to think about their behavior and relationships with others. These animated series not only brought joy and laughter, but also shaped an entire cultural era. They taught children the value of friendship, teamwork, problem-solving, and an optimistic outlook on the world. The very process of waiting for these shows also became an important part of the cultural code of the time. In the morning, even before breakfast, children would sit in their cozy pajamas with a cup of chocolate milk or juice, ready to immerse themselves in this bright, fantastic, and a little bit crazy world that was so far removed from their everyday worries. Topps baseball player card collectibles, gum inside the pack. In the 70s, Topps baseball collector cards were a real treasure. They were bought in small stores for pennies, but inside there was something priceless. A card with the image of your favorite player and chewing gum, terribly hard and covered in powdered sugar. Collections were kept in the shoe boxes, and kids would exchange duplicates right at school recess or in the backyard. Rare cards were considered the most valuable, Hank Aaron or Nolan Ryan, for example. Some even wrapped them in plastic before the advent of professional protectors. to leave them for the kids. Playing Twister with friends on the living room rug. Twister was like it was made for the 70s. Bright, flesh-colored, and a little crazy. A colored mat would be laid out right in the living room, and the confusion would begin. Left hand, red, right foot, green. Within a couple minutes, everyone was already intertwined, falling over with laughter and trying not to crush their neighbor. It was one of those games that broke down boundaries, physical and social. Often the game ended with everyone lying in a heap, laughing and throwing arms and legs off each other. Neither PlayStation nor TikTok offer that kind of contact and real-life fun. Yellow school buses with the distinctive odor of seat vinyl. Yellow school buses are an integral part of the childhood of those who grew up in the 70s. These buses were not just a means of transportation for students, but also a kind of symbol of school life. Every day when a school child boarded the bus, a new stage of the day began, and the journey itself turned into a special adventure, full of expectations and small joys. The yellow buses, with their distinctive coloring, were easily recognizable and almost symbolized America at the time. They were brightly colored, simple, but at the same time had a special atmosphere. The drivers of these buses often became authority figures for the children with whom they had to spend their morning and evening rides discussing news and jokes. But the most important thing about these buses was, of course, the ride itself. Every morning when a school child climbed onto the bus, he was confronted with that very smell, the smell of vinyl seats, which became an integral part of this transportation. This particular aroma of vinyl upholstery, hot plastic, and slightly musty air mixed with the smell of a fresh morning became a symbol of school days for many. Passengers often moved around the bus, choosing whether to sit in the front, by the window, or at the very back. For younger students, sitting in the front rows meant being closer to the driver, while for older students it meant being able to talk to friends in a more private part of the bus. The yellow school buses were also a place for socializing. It was where morning conversations, homework discussions, little jokes, and stories began. Each bus ride was in a way a mini ceremony, when not just a school day began, but a whole chapter. The kids would walk up the steps of the bus trying not to be late and find their seats among the other kids. Sometimes you could hear someone start to sing a song, others would pick it up, and the whole bus would sing in unison. In addition, the journey on the bus was filled with distinctive sounds, from low-key conversations to the thudding of doors as the bus stopped abruptly or began to move. The attention to how the bus rolls smoothly down the road, how the door opened to drop off the students, and how they ran merrily across the schoolyard added even more vividness to the moment. Traveling on yellow buses was a daily part of the school routine. These buses, though commonplace, were incredibly important in the lives of school children. They provided not only transportation, but also provided the first morning meetings, the first conversations with friends, and the first steps on the way to a new school day. Over the years, these buses became not just part of the infrastructure, but an important element of the time, becoming an enduring attribute of American school life. Listening to music on vinyl, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Fleetwood Mac. Music in the 70s was an integral part of everyday life. Vinyl records were put on the turntable at home. The needle was lowered onto the track, and music would start playing in the room with a slight crackle. Albums by Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Fleetwood Mac, or the Rolling Stones were listened to in their entirety, from start to finish, as a single work. Record covers were part of the aesthetic. They were looked at, kept carefully, sometimes even hung on the wall. Music was played in bedrooms, at parties, in basements with dim lights. There was no skip button. Each track was listened to carefully, with anticipation, as if each song could change something inside. DiscDialed telephones, a wire stretched across the house. DiscDialed telephones are not just a commonplace attribute of the time, but a symbol of the pre-digital communication era. In the 70s, telephones in homes were not like they are today. They were large, heavy devices with a disc dialer that was a true art form that required patience and precision. This dialer was a round metal disc with numbers that had to be rotated by hand to dial a number. Each turn was a ritual, where each stroke of the finger on the wheel signified a specific digit. When someone wanted to make a call, they had to stand next to the phone, put the receiver down, and start spinning the dial, spinning it all the way down, which took a few seconds for each digit. The process was far from quick, but it had its magic. You could feel each call become a little more meaningful. Unlike today's instant dialers, each phone call was an act of meditation. And even though the process was slow, each home had its own unique routine when making calls. From those who called friends and relatives to those who waited for long-awaited calls from loved ones or even loved ones. In addition, the dial telephone was the real communication center of the house. The wires connecting it to other parts of the apartment stretched long distances and were usually stretched all over the apartment. These long, twisted cables often turned into a real challenge for the residents of the building. If someone was on the phone in one room and another person was trying to pass by on their way to the kitchen or bathroom, the wire could create real obstacles. Sometimes they got tangled up, could be stepped on accidentally, and this led to the whole house becoming part of one long cable. In such conditions, talking on the phone took on a special atmosphere. It was not possible to talk on the phone anywhere, as it is today. You had to choose a place with access to a phone so that you did not forget important points of the conversation. Often the phone was in the hallway or kitchen, and someone in the family, whether it was mom, dad, or the kids, would wait until it was their turn to talk. You could always hear someone talking in the house, and even the sound of the phone itself with the distinctive click when the disc returned to its original position was a sign that the conversation was over. In addition, phones with a dial pad often became a hub for communicating with friends, relatives, and neighbors. It was the primary way to keep in touch in a world before social media and mobile devices. Calls could last for hours, from simple conversations to long conversations that centered around news, life events, or just filled with idle chatter about how the day went. And despite the fact that such phones seemed heavy and uncomfortable compared to today's models, they undoubtedly left a vivid mark on the communication culture of the time. These disc dial phones were not just a technical device, but a part of everyday life, creating an atmosphere of communication that was much more personal and perhaps more patient than the instant communications we have today. Pop Rocks candy and the scary rumor that it explodes in your stomach. Pop Rocks were more than just candy. They were a phenomenon. When put on the tongue, they would fizz, burst, and tickle the palate. There were legends in school circles about how someone allegedly ate Pop Rocks and drank soda, which led to an explosion in the stomach. These stories only fueled interest. Candy was bought on the way home, shared with friends, and experimented with flavors. The brightly colored packaging and sizzling mouthfeel made Pop Rocks an integral part of children's pranks and urban legends. Flared pants and platform shoes, especially for school discos. The fashion of the 70s was daring and expressive. The flats started at the knee and turned the legs into triangles, which looked especially effective in motion. Fabrics were bright, with geometric patterns, psychedelic prints, or shiny trims. Platform shoes added height and seemed incredibly stylish, though uncomfortable. At high school parties, the lights flashed, disco music played, and the clothes seemed an important part of the ritual of growing up. The style was an expression of individuality in the free era. Playing in the backyard until dark, without phones or constant supervision. After school, kids would go to the backyard or outside and just disappear for a few hours. The games were simple: hide and seek, catch up, red light, green light, impromptu baseball games, or building shanties. Parents didn't worry if a child wasn't seen until sunset. Everyone knew he was around. Freedom, independence, and real physical activity became an important part of childhood. And every evening ended with the phrase, "Home, it's already dark." Cardboard appliance boxes turned into rockets, houses, or cars. Large refrigerator or TV boxes were not thrown away. They became a material for fantasy. Doors and windows were cut out, dashboards were drawn, paper levers or rudders were glued on. They were houses, spaceships, time machines. Sometimes cushions were dragged inside, a flashlight was turned on, and a secret headquarters was set up there. A simple package turned into a world of adventures created by a child's imagination. Fountain pen writing lessons and ruled notebooks for calligraphy. Learning to write was a ritual. Notebooks with oblique and straight lines, ink, pens with metal nibs. Each letter was written slowly, in a pattern, with controlled tilt and pressure. The ink could smudge, leaving a stain, and then the page had to be rewritten. Writing beautifully was considered important, and handwriting grades were almost as important as math grades. For many, it was the first experience of concentrated work and patience. Mobile ice cream trucks with a tune heard a block away. Mobile ice cream trucks were not just a way to buy cold treats on hot summer days, but an entire tradition that was associated with childhood happiness and unforgettable moments. These vans became the real heroes of the summer streets, reminding everyone that the day was full of lightness, freedom, and fun. Ice cream vans with a distinctive tune playing in the distance were something special. The sound of this music, often repeated as a familiar tune, became a signal to children that it was okay to run, grabbing petty cash or pennies, to the street van that was coming up the street, slowly rolling its van. The melody of this van, whether it was old classic songs or simple sounds, played on the ear, awakening the senses and filling the day with excitement and joy. It could be heard from several blocks away, and the kids knew it was a chance to get the coveted ice cream. It was like a small celebration. Everyone froze when the sound started to come, and a game of anticipation began. Who could get there faster? Who could be the first to buy their favorite dainty dessert? The tune was a familiar motif that also created an atmosphere of nostalgia, and at that moment you could feel the whole street start to come alive. Every corner filled with anticipation. The ice cream men were generally kind and friendly people, always ready to serve children. Inside their vans were many different kinds of ice cream, from simple sugar cones to more elaborate desserts such as ice cream in waffle cups with colorful sprinkles, chocolate or caramel sauces. All of these treats looked like a real summer delight, and every customer, whether child or adult, could choose something to their liking. The van in which the ice cream man sold his products was a small oasis of happiness in the middle of the day, a moment of simple pleasure that waited on the corner in the middle of the block. The smell of sweet ice cream mixed with the hot summer air was inseparable from this image, and the children in turn gathered around, eagerly waiting for their turn, which also became an important part of this ritual. Everyone chatted, joked, sometimes argued about which ice cream to choose, but in the end, everyone left satisfied, with ice cream in their hands and smiles on their faces. These vans and their melody became an integral part of 70s culture. They symbolized a moment when summer seemed endless and everything was available. Without worries or rush, ice cream men with their vans brought not only sweet treats, but also emotions that stayed with children for a lifetime. Cassette recorders and recording songs from the radio, including the DJ's voice at the beginning of the track. Cassette recorders became an important element of life in the 70s and 80s, giving people the ability to record music that they could enjoy whenever they wanted, as well as capture the best moments from the radio. These devices came to symbolize musical freedom, allowing people to create their own music collections and share songs with friends. Cassette recorders and the ability to record from the radio opened up an entire era in music appreciation and culture. Cassettes were popular media at the time, and their advent brought a significant revolution in the world of music. Up until that point, music was only available through vinyl records or radio broadcasts. But with the advent of cassettes, people had the opportunity to have their collection of favorite songs recorded directly onto a compact tape. Most surprisingly, the process of recording songs from the radio became not only a convenient, but also an exciting ritual for many. It was a way to keep track of new releases and access music hits that were just coming out on the radio. Recording from radio to cassette tape became a whole art form. Many people tuned their tape recorders to record their favorite songs as they were played over the air. It was important to be quick and accurate at that moment, because if you slipped up even a couple of seconds, you could miss part of the song or hear the presenter talking, which could sometimes interrupt an important moment. Sometimes it became a real sports competition, waiting for the right song, quickly pressing the record button, and then recording amid the crackling and interference of the radio. Many teenagers and young adults collected entire mixtapes, cassettes with a selection of their favorite songs. However, the process of recording from the radio was not only interesting, but also emotionally intense. Waiting for the cherished song on the radio, the tense moment of recording, and then listening to the recorded song on the tape recorder. It was something exciting and meaningful. Besides, tape recorders were not the quietest devices. They had a characteristic noise during recording and playback, creating an additional atmosphere of real music playback. This sound, the very process of the device, its buttons and mechanisms, became something special, evoking nostalgic memories of those times. But tape recorders weren't just a means of recording either. They also played an important role in socializing with friends. People could organize listening sessions for their new song collections, share interesting recordings, and discuss music. It was a ritual to insert a cassette into a tape recorder, press play, and immerse yourself in the world of your favorite tunes. Such moments created strong bonds between people and became an important part of their cultural experience. Thus, cassette recorders and radio recording of songs did not just change the way people listened to music, but also became a link between generations, cultures, and people. These devices allowed everyone to become the author of their own musical world and filled their lives with real musical discoveries. Buying school supplies in September, new pencil cases, scented erasers, and glitter rulers. The beginning of the school year was an event. Stores were filled with school supplies, bright notebooks, pencil cases with compartments, pens with colored ink, rulers with glitter inside, erasers with the smell of strawberries or grapes. Choosing these things turned into a special ritual. Everything was new, neat, full of hope for a good year. For children, it was a way to express themselves through the choice of covers, inscriptions, and stickers. Family show nights, the Brady Bunch, MASH, Happy Days. TV in the 70s brought the whole family together. After dinner, one of the popular shows would come on, and it would become a time together. The Brady Bunch showed the perfect extended family. MASH was a mix of humor and the pain of war. Happy Days was a romanticized past of the 50s. Everyone sat side by side, sometimes on the floor by the screen, eating popcorn or ice cream bowls. These shows didn't just entertain. They formed values, provided topics of conversation, and became part of the home atmosphere. Lemonade stands made with your own hands, signage, plastic cups, 5 cents a serving. Lemonade stands were built from whatever was at hand: a crate, a folding table, a blanket as a canopy. The sign was written in felt-tip pen, "Lemonade, 5 cents." The drink was made from powdered or fresh lemons and sold to passers-by or neighbors. It was the first entrepreneurial experience where you had to smile, give change, be polite. Some even had boxes for tips. Everything looked real and made me feel proud to be independent. Flashcards with multiplication tables and educational movies on the movie projector in the classroom. Learning at school was slow but intense. The multiplication table was taught with flashcards. The teacher would quickly show 7x6, and you had to shout out 42. In class, short educational movies were played. The movie projector hummed, the film clicked, and clips about science, geography, or hygiene played on the screen. Sometimes the image would jump or get stuck, and we had to wait for the film to be corrected. The experience was a collective one. The whole class was immersed in a shared, almost theatrical experience. Holidays at school with homemade baked goods and costumes made by parents. School holidays were real events, especially Halloween, Christmas, or Thanksgiving. Parents brought pies, cupcakes, and sugar-coated cookies for treats. Tables were set right in the classroom. Costumes were made by hand. Robots from boxes, witches from old skirts and triangular hats, ghosts from sheets. Teachers let you put aside your textbooks and had quizzes, contests, and dances. Everything was naive, heartfelt, and really fun, without expensive decorations and artificial entourage. Soda machines with sodas in glass bottles. You drop a coin, open the door, take out a Coke. Soda machines stood outside stores, gas stations, school cafeterias. Metal with a bright Coca-Cola or Pepsi logo, they attracted attention. Throw in a coin, turn the handle, and you could pull the glass bottle out through the door. The soda was drunk right there, holding the bottle by the cool neck. Sometimes you had to insert the cap into a special hole to open it. The glass bottles were then turned in for money. It was a ritual, especially in summer when a cool cola seemed the perfect escape from the heat. Group trips to the movies with friends and big buckets of buttered popcorn. Movie theaters were an important meeting place for teenagers. Big posters, buying tickets at the box office, smelling fresh popcorn and waiting for the lights to go out. In the auditorium, there was banter, laughter, and fright together. Movies were playing on the screens, which were then discussed for weeks. Sometimes they took one bucket for everyone, ate with their hands, drinking soda from giant glasses with a lid and a straw. The atmosphere of the movie theater seemed almost magical, especially at evening screenings of comedies or horror movies. Four-wheeled roller skates and discos and roller drums. Roller rinks were the center of entertainment. Polished parquet, neon lights, mirror balls, music by the Bee Gees or Donna Summer. People skated in a circle, holding hands, doing tricks, spinning. At the entrance, they gave out rollers with hard plastic wheels and laces. Long antenna radios, frequency tuning, and manual search for the desired station. Compact portable radios with a long metal antenna were part of everyday life. Sitting on the porch or in your room, you could twist the tuning knob and catch your favorite station, often with interference and hiss. Rock music played on the air. Evening shows were on. DJs told jokes or said hello. Sometimes the antenna had to be pulled out all the way and tilted in a certain direction to make the noise disappear. Radio was not just a source of music, but the background of life. It was listened to in everything, at home, in the car, on the beach. Records and turntables with a needle that was carefully lowered onto the track. Listening to music was a special ritual. The records were carefully taken out of the envelopes by holding the edges. The turntable would be turned up to the right speed, the needle would be brought up and gently lowered, and then the song would play. The rustle, the clicks, the warm sound, all this created an atmosphere that could not be duplicated. Album covers were often real works of art, and you could look at them for hours. People gathered collections, kept them carefully, discussed them with friends. Do you have the new Pink Floyd album? Letters from friends and postcards in the mail, with stamps, in envelopes, with handwriting. Long-distance communication was slow but heartfelt. Letters were handwritten on paper, sometimes with drawings in the margins. Envelopes were sealed, decorated with stamps, and mailed. They waited weeks for a reply. Letters were carefully kept in boxes, reread, recognized the handwriting at first sight. For holidays came postcards, brightly colored, embossed with short but sincere words. It was a way to show attention, even if you were far away. Not a notice, but a real physical reminder of someone's care. Waiting for photos after developing, film, envelope, and surprises in the pictures. The photos didn't appear instantly. First the film, for 24 or 36 frames. Then there was a wait for the film to be developed. When the envelope with the photos finally arrived in my hands, it was a whole moment. The smell of photo paper, the rustle of thick glossy cards, the joy of successful shots and disappointment if someone blinked or was blurred. These photos were not deleted, not edited. They were real. They were pasted into albums, signed with dates, shown to friends. Each photo is a piece of time. Comic book and gum stores at the checkout counter. Shelves of superheroes and collectible covers. Comic books were sold in supermarkets, newsstands, specialty shops. Marvel, DC, Archie, characters came to life on color pages. They were read in droves, traded, treasured. Covers with issue number 1 could be treasures. Next to them, they sold gum with inserts, comic books, stickers, cards. Sometimes there were many posters inside. The clerk knew the regular customers by sight. It was a whole culture. Remembering these things, you want not just to smile, but as if for a moment to return to the place where summer smelled like freshly cut grass and watermelon-flavored gum, where a trip to the movies was an event and a vinyl player was a window to another world. Those years taught us to enjoy simple things, to appreciate moments, to be in the moment. Everyone who lived in the 70s has their own memories, but they have so much in common. They unite, they warm, they make the heart beat softer. Today, everything is different. There are phones in our hands, headphones in our ears, and dozens of things to do in our heads. But sometimes it's good to stop and remember what it was like to live without hurry, with records, letters, real voices, and warm streets where everyone knew each other by name. It's not just nostalgia. It's a memory of a time when many things were first time, sincerely and without filters. Thank you for immersing yourself in this journey through memories.